Yeah.
Small introductory anecdote. I did just get back from the emergency bleeding treatment class that we were taking this morning, which was super interesting, but also came up with an anecdote that I was like, oh yeah, I heard about that, unfortunately, which is tourniquets. There was a big problem with knockoff tourniquets on Amazon.
Oh.
Which is a very bad problem to have if you have a tourniquet that does not function correctly.
Yeah, that's like, because you're not going to find that out until it is very much too late to do anything about it.
Yeah, and
that's kind of,
one of those things where it's like, I can't imagine being the person who's like, yeah, I'm going to sell a bunch of low budget tourniquets that we haven't verified work at all. Like, but yeah, that was a big thing in the Everything More book about Amazon, was talking about knockoffs, and that's the worst possible knockoff scenario you could imagine. Hello and welcome to the Fast and Broken podcast, where we take a critical look at the fast-moving world of tech and online culture. I'm Carly Rector, a software engineer and startup founder who spent basically the entire afternoon yesterday live blogging the Anthropic versus Department of Defense developments, and that shouldn't be a thing that we need to do about national security developments, so I'm not really happy about that.
Yeah. And I'm Teresa Kramer, an MBA student, project manager, and semi-professional voice actor who spent about the last 2 hours watching Hank Green's video on his projections for the future of AI, which was also very, I don't know, an interesting sort of like perspective on things, but also one of those things. It's like, I wish we weren't having these conversations right now.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Odd state to be living in.
Yes, a bad state to be living in, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, we will definitely spend most of the time today talking about the Anthropic versus Department of Defense debate, fight, whatever you want to call it. I guess for posterity, we're recording this Saturday at approximately 3 p.m., but we will talk about events up until the current moment, as far as I know. So, but before then, we're going to have a lightning round. We'll talk about some other stuff that has happened lately as briefly as possible, because I do want to cut it a little short today. So we'll see how that goes. All right, lightning round. Let's Block lays off 40% of the company, approximately 4,000 people. Jack Dorsey announced this on X and also to his company. People were commenting on it being one of the more generous severance packages and sensibly done announcements, but also he fired 40% of the company. And basically had a lot of narrative that was like, I think I want to do this ahead of time and not do a bunch of multiple small cuts. And I think other companies are seeing the same thing, and this is going to come from other people soon too. So
yeah, it came up at work when it happened, and the sort of consensus that me and my coworkers sort of arrived to is like, it's interesting how we're getting a lot of these really big layoffs that are like, people are saying it's like, oh, it's AI and whatnot, but it's also like, I wonder how much of this is just employee HR correction from overscaling during COVID, because you did see a lot of these companies kind of scaling up and seeing more business during like COVID, but it's like COVID was exceptional circumstances, and the adjustments to headcount that were made during that time should never have really been like permanent full-time employees. And so now I feel like we're just kind of seeing things adjusting back down in a way, but it's like, I don't know how much that's actually true. Or just
I think a lot of people are speculating that. I do not think that's true. I think that's cope. Unfortunately, because I think that's true in a lot of cases for some companies, that they did overhire for the pandemic, but the big overhiring was 2021, 2022. And it's been a while since then. And a lot of people have laid off some of those people or just not hired more people and had attrition. So I don't think that can explain a 40% layoff. First of all,
not a 40%, but I think it might be part of it.
Yeah, and then also just the 40% is a huge amount. You don't. That's a really big hit to your company's operations. Even if you don't actually need those people to do those jobs, that's a significant organizational change to have you have half the people to do your work now. And then also I've said this before, but I am currently doing the work that would previously have required an entire engineering team without AI. So it is just factually true to me that, especially if you're doing mostly software, which is what they are doing, that you can do a lot more with less people. And I do also agree that a lot of these cuts are going to come as people realize that.
Yeah, though it is like, again, like I know that like anecdotally, like in your experience, you're seeing a lot of that, but there is still studies that have
Yeah,
shown that it's like not
the,
necessarily the case for everybody that
sure.
can do like more work
And
with
that's why you
AI. So
fire
it is
40%
just
of them. But
yeah,
uh,
yeah, but still, it's like I don't know, like from an HR perspective, it's just a bad move. It's a bad move from the perspective of company morale, and it's a
sure.
bad move from the perspective of like succession planning and also just like the experiential knowledge that you are losing in doing this, like putting aside the productivity aspect of it, and it's like the amount of people required to complete X units of work. There are so many other downstream impacts to laying off 40% of your company that I think
Yeah.
it's like it's not a smart move to
Well,
make.
so accept my premise for a moment that like they could do the current work that they had, whatever, 8,000 people with 1,000 people. Okay, what's the best thing that they should do now? Like continue
Furlough.
like those people, they're not going to need them back though. Like that's not a furlough, that's a layoff.
Yeah, but like the thing is though is that like you're assuming no scaling if you're saying that you're not going to need them back. I'm not saying that they don't do any layoffs. It's like certainly they do need some layoffs, but I think that like a 40% headcount layoff is just from a like business operations perspective a poor stance to take. I'm literally in the middle of like an HR course that's talking about a lot of the different options that are available to companies that are sort of downsizing or going through economic shrinkage. Like there's lots of options available that aren't layoffs, and some of those options do wind up increasing like voluntary attrition in
Sure.
a lot of ways, but they like are generally better for
But
maintaining experiential knowledge, maintaining employee morale, while also cutting costs in a way. Because the thing
yeah.
is, like, layoffs are expensive. This is a thing. Layoffs are expensive. They
Yes.
cost money. Those really nice severance packages that
I
everyone's
know.
talking
It's like
about.
this, I saw someone calculate millions of dollars. But again, my premise is
Yeah,
here like
yeah,
this is not even all of the people that they need to cut. The premise that I said is that they could do the work with 1,000 people. So they are still
sure,
4x overstaffed after this based
sure.
on this premise. And so like all of those things can still be true and you still need to cut 40% of the
Right.
company. So
But yeah, but cutting out 40% of the company all at once is not the way to solve the problem.
okay.
I think the best approach is looking for voluntary time off, looking for reductions in like scaled reductions in salary, and like some layoffs, not 40% layoffs. And I think that
Okay, how
over
much is
time,
some?
I'd have to do calculations on that to figure it out.
Yeah, and like I think the thing is they did those calculations and they decided on 40%.
But the thing is, I don't think that they did. I don't think that they did them like, because the thing is, like, layoffs have become so popular. Layoffs have become something that is so like acceptable to do from a cost savings measure. It's just like they're just kind of jumping on the bandwagon of like, oh, everybody else is laying people off. Cool, then I can do it
I
too.
mean,
And I'm
40% is not
gonna
on the bandwagon. 40% is a like dramatic change that other people are looking at and being
sure,
like, wow, that's a lot. So,
sure, but
and like again,
but
I'm
it's
not
taking the bandwagon a step further.
and like
There's like
obviously I'm not arguing that I like layoffs or that this was a good
no,
idea, but it's like I also don't know what choices these companies are supposed to make, given that I do think AI is actually going to take over a whole lot of the work.
like you could 30-hour work weeks. You know, it's
Yeah,
like you could actually see people like, hey, like, okay, cool, we don't need everybody to be doing work. Let's keep everybody's salaries the same and have 30-hour work weeks.
yeah. I mean, I would love to see that
Yeah,
myself, but like,
again, like these are all things, because things like, again, like saying that you only need 10% of the company to do your current work means that like you have an incredible profit margin right now.
mhm.
It's basically saying that okay, cool, I have increased my efficiency insanely and I only need this many people to do this much work, but I'm still going to make as much money as I'm currently making. And so in that situation, like they don't need to lay off 40% of the company. There's actually not a
Yeah.
business
I mean,
need there.
there's not currently because they are the first people to do it. If you're assuming this is true across the industry, like it's not just
Mm-hmm.
them that are having this change, right?
Yeah.
So now a startup that has like 10 people can build a product that does the same thing that they do, for example. Like, I think that's true in a lot of cases, and I have seen it be the case. Maybe it's like not 10 people, maybe it's 100 people, but like the problem is that startup is going to have a much different profit margin than
Sure.
you. So they can set their prices like way lower, and then immediately cut off your business. So like that's the sort of long term. Like, again, I'm not saying that I think this is a good choice. I am seeing that I think it's the logical choice based on what they are seeing in the economy. And what that is if they keep going, they are going to have their competitors who are willing to cut, or who are startups who just started with like 10 people, come in and undercut them. And I think that's probably true. So
Well, like, again, like, I'm not saying they don't need to reduce headcount. It's like I'm not saying no layoffs, but again, it's like I do think it's more valuable for them as a company to maintain like more of the workforce than 60%, because of the fact that it's like, you know, there's just because somebody else is doing it cheaper doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it better. But by you reducing your human capital, your human assets in such a large way, you are basically saying, I don't think I'm going to differentiate myself on like product features.
I don't think they're not saying that too. I think the differential is just so large. Because again, in my premise, they still have way more people than the minimum amount. It's just that the current amount is way more than that still. So, like, and like that's just the thing. It's like, I don't disagree with any of the things that you're saying, that it's valuable to still have those people, and that like 40% is a lot. I just think like if they were really cutting down to the minimum amount of people that they need to do the work, it would be way bigger cut than that even, which I know is like sounds insane, and I realize it sounds insane saying it, but like I think they have looked at it and they have concluded that that is true, and that's why they're doing this. I don't think they're like delusional.
I don't know. I think you have more faith in the people at the top of these companies not being bought into sort of like the AI bubble hype than I do in that situation. But we can move on, because I think we've gone a little in the weeds on something that's supposed to be a quick topic.
But yeah, I predict we will see more of layoffs at that scale, as Jack Dorsey says, because I think he is right that this is just how software is going to work now in the future. So I don't like it, but I do think it's true. Next lightning round topic. Netflix, Paramount, Warner Brothers. Netflix walked away and they took the Paramount deal. I'm not happy about it.
No, I don't think anybody's really happy about it. One, I think the thing that like jumps out to me is the fact that Ted Sarandos, the Netflix CEO, went to the White House apparently and was reported to have had meetings with the administration before Netflix pulled out. That seems really suspect in a way that I don't like the implications of. But then there's also the fact that like this means that, you know, like kind of like far right aligned interests own like CBS and CNN and a bunch of different news like outlets. And what we're down to like ABC and NBC are the ones that aren't owned by, you know, Trump aligned interests, which is just, it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah, and like I assume Netflix's logic here, apart from any like backroom pressures that is going to happen, is that based in the current administration, they figured they weren't going to get antitrust approval, and it became more expensive, and their stock kept dropping because they were embroiled in this deal, and finally they were just like, this isn't worth it, which is fair probably, but also bad for the media ecosystem.
Well, like, quite frankly, it's annoying that the only options were like, well, is it going to be Paramount or is it going to be Netflix? It's like,
so I was going to say, I'm not sure there was a good choice for the media ecosystem out of these choices, but
it was still going to cause consolidation of media interests in single companies, which I think is a bad thing, and that really should be, you know, the FTC should do something about it, but they're not going to, because, you know, again, the current administration. I have seen like some folks posting like opinion pieces of just like, oh yes, Netflix is playing the big brain move and Paramount's going to kind of bankrupt itself by how much it paid for essentially overpaid for Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, that's a very optimistic take.
I mean,
sure would be nice.
most of the money is not even coming from Paramount. Paramount is a smaller company than Warner Brothers. All of the money is coming from David Ellison. So,
yeah, but it's still like, yeah, it might be coming from David Ellison, but it's coming through Paramount because because they're the ones that are actually like inking the deal. But
yeah, he's financing it. But
yeah, so it's just like, what's the impact going to be on Paramount financials? Quite frankly, my personal stake in this is just like, I'm gonna be really pissed off if they cancel John Oliver. It seems like they probably will. So it's like, I don't know, maybe Netflix will pick him up or something. It's very annoying to live in this, again, like this proto-fascist autocracy where the state is taking control of various media interests, and so they only spout out things that are, pro the current administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see how that one goes. Okay, third, slightly lightning. We'll see how lightning it is. Topic before we get into the meat of Anthropic is unrelated to their fight they're having with the Department of Defense. Anthropic updated their responsible scaling policy this week to version 3, and notably made a change that a lot of people were reporting on as them basically dropping their core safety promise, which I think is a little bit overstated personally. Basically, in their responsible scaling policy, they lay out, like, here are some risk levels that we think AI could hit, like risk level 1, 2, 3 in various categories, like biological weapons or whatever. And then they lay out, okay, if something is at biological weapons risk level 3, we think we should have these level 3 safeguards for it. And they have laid this all out ahead of time such that once they hit a model that is capable of biological weapons level 3, they will not launch it unless they have level 3 safeguards on it. So that was sort of like the initial premise of the responsible scaling policy, is that they would do this, and that they will continue to update it over time as they sort of like define the levels further out, because they hadn't like fully defined levels 4 and 5 or whatever yet, because they needed to learn more about it from the earlier ones. So that has been how it has existed up to this point. The reason they made changes are, they talk about in their post, the primary way I like to think of it is, like, one, it's actually really hard to tell when a model is at danger level 3. They haven't been able to prove that it's at biological weapon danger level 3 or 4, basically. And so some people are like, I think this could be this dangerous. And some other people are like, I don't see any proof that it is that dangerous. And given that situation, it is unclear whether they should launch the model or not. And also, two, some of the criteria or some of the safeguards that they think they need for these higher danger levels are not things they can do by themselves, basically, as a single company. They're things that require regulation or industry-wide standards to really be effective. And so via the combination of those two, like, states of the world, there's this very strong incentive based on the previous way the responsible scaling policy was, for them to just say the models don't meet the danger levels so that they can launch them, basically, because they can't prove that they are, and they don't have the means to put in the safeguards for them, basically. So, like, that's not great. So the two approaches that you end up in that situation is, somehow you're like, I think this is risky enough that we should stop anyway, and just stop, despite the fact that you can't prove to anyone else in the industry that those dangers actually exist. You just personally say, like, I think we should stop, which is hard to do, first of all, and questionably effective. Or you pretend that your models aren't actually that dangerous such that you can launch them, basically. Like, the fact, because you have made the promise, we will not launch them if they meet this danger level, the fact that you do launch them implies that they did not meet the danger level, because they have made that hard promise. So they were basically like, that's bad, and we don't want to imply that we think these things are for sure safe by launching them when we don't know that. So they changed it so that that promise is no longer there. The promise of, if something hits a danger level, we will not launch it. And instead, they will basically give a very comprehensive overview of what they think the risks are, like via every 6-month risk report and a bunch of other stuff that they do. So like, I understand why people are like, well, that's not great, because the only thing that was really like stopping you from launching models was like this promise. This is all much more fuzzy now, which is true.
Yep.
But on the other hand, like, I don't think the change in their policy is what did that. I think it was fuzzy before, and I would rather them acknowledge the fuzziness and be like, actually, this is fuzzy, and here are some more extensive details on it, than try and stick to their previous promise when it is not possible to stick to. Is my take on that, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. For me, this kind of came to like I think the conversation we were having maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago, where it's like Anthropic is kind of precariously positioned in that
Mhm.
they are like the one AI company that is like, hey, we're going to like try to do the right thing, and we're going to try to like gain consumer trust and be ethical about our approach. And even if the result of this is really just optics, it's bad optics. And I grant you all of the things like you're saying in terms of like, okay, well, we don't actually know if these models are dangerous or not, and so we kind of have to change how we talk about them and think about them and what have you. Sure, but in a situation where it's like we're trying to like make sure that we garner consumer trust regarding the product that we are building, it's not a good look to basically be like, hey, we know we made this promise, but oops, turns out we can't, like,
Yeah.
we don't think we can keep this promise, and so we're just going to get rid of it. It's a bad look regardless of the underlying factuality of that statement. And so I feel like it is kind of a demerit in terms of like their overall like positioning themselves as like the ethically mindful, like responsible AI company, and
I agree that it's
scope of everything.
I agree that it's a bad look, and I think they obviously knew that it was going to be a bad look. So I think why it does not make me think any worse on them, and actually kind of makes me respect the decision here, is that, like, again, they could have not done this. They could have continued to say, we will continue to not release models if they beat the danger thresholds, and not acknowledged that it was not possible for them to do that. But internally, they were like, this feels bad. It's disingenuous, basically, to keep the promise. And the fact that they were willing to say it would be disingenuous for us to keep this promise, even though that was going to look bad for them, I think is good.
It's mid, I'll say.
Yeah,
it's middling,
that's fair.
Because sure, them being like, oh, we know for a fact that we cannot keep this promise, but we're going to keep saying that we can keep the promise. That's bad. But like, we know for a fact that we can't keep this promise, so we're just going to get rid of the promise is mid. Whereas like, oh, we know we can't keep this promise, so we're going to kind of essentially put all of our effort into finding out how we can keep the promise and keeping the promise in their policy. I feel like is the like maybe unrealistic, but I feel like that's the more ideal update.
And I mean, I just don't think it's not that they're not putting a whole bunch of effort in trying to figure out if the
but backing down from it still is it's not ideal.
Yeah, and like they could have principled be like, actually, we will not release any models. Like, again, there was still the option of like, we will not release any more models until we can get like we have an understanding of what is necessary. Yeah. And that is where it gets into like, okay, do you think that is helpful when other people are going to continue releasing models?
I think it is, because again, it's positioning yourselves as having principles. It's positioning yourselves as being socially responsible in how you're doing this, when everybody else is being very flagrantly disrespectful and unethical towards like the societal good. And so them stepping back from this it's a trust bust. It's like they're taking from their cachet of trust that they have been building with their users, and time will tell how well they get to build that back up. But
but yeah, that's my take on it, is like, I think people are being, I agree that it is kind of mid and that the fact that they had to do this at all is not really encouraging, regardless of just like what you think about the act itself. Like the state of the world that prompted it, such that we can have no regulation and they not to be able to tell if these systems can do things, is not my favorite. But I also think everyone who is just like, well, Anthropic no longer cares about safety now. They've given into the capitalist machine. I think that's a little bit overwrought, but
it's not 100% wrong.
yeah. Well, I mean, like they were never not a company that cared about the capitalist machine. Hello again. It is now the next day. We ran out of time to do our lightning round because it was not very lightning and I had to leave. So now we're here on Sunday, and more things have happened since then, so we can have more things to talk about on this topic. So yes, now on the fight between Anthropic and the Department of Defense.
Yep.
It's like I have a chronological series of events here, and it's like a dozen series of events because since we last talked in the last week, all of these things have happened. So I have to go all the way back to Tuesday just to start telling this story. So I will try and give the overview for someone who's coming in cold. I don't know if anyone's coming in completely cold at this point, but just in case. So Anthropic has been working with the military, the Department of Defense, for a while. They were, up until very recently, the only AI company that could work on classified projects. That has since changed, but the department is using only Claude of the big AI models for their work, and they apparently have been getting a lot of good use out of it. However, there was some conflict over the specific terms of a $200 million contract, in that Anthropic has a particular set of terms of use, and the Department of Defense did not want to abide by that terms of use, which is like a normal thing that happens in contracts, but then you set up a different set of terms. And basically, the government said that they wanted the terms to be, we can use it for whatever we want, all lawful uses, quote. And Anthropic said, no, we would like to keep our two red line standards, which are no completely autonomous weapons targeting or mass surveillance domestically. That then blew up into a huge fight because the government didn't want to do that, et cetera, et cetera. This then came to even more of a head on Tuesday, this past Tuesday. Dario Amodei met with Pete Hegseth, and they had an in-person meeting where they talked through, and it supposedly was a relatively cordial but tense meeting, but also Hegseth gave them a Friday 5 p.m. Eastern deadline to agree to their terms, basically. And he added on to the threats that we talked about last time. So last time we talked about them threatening the designation of being a supply chain risk, which would basically mean that not only could no one in the military use Claude, but no one working on a military contract could use Claude because it's so risky. And then he added an extra threat onto that to this meeting, which is to invoke the Defense Production Act, which was basically a way to compel companies to produce things so that you could say, okay, you have to make us munitions. You can't do whatever consumer product would make you more money. Most recently used for producing COVID supplies. Which is a crazy thing to do. And then there's a Politico article we've linked here that points out that those two threats are completely incoherent, with incoherent being a quote from actually a prior Trump AI advisor. Because one of the threats is basically this is so dangerous that we can't possibly use it. And the other is, this is so essential that we're going to compel you to make us use it. But it's basically just none of the actual reasons for it matter. It was just basically if you don't agree, we will ruin your business in one way or another. And we have so many options to ruin your business. I have some quotes from Congress in here that are basically just why are you guys doing this? This is Senator Tom Tillis told Axios, why the hell are we having this discussion in public? And also that having a really short deadline was an insane thing to do, which kind of is. So that was the deal in this week where we were leading up to this Friday 5 p.m. deadline. On Thursday, Dario Amodei posted a statement on Anthropic's news blog basically saying, here's the situation. Yes, we were given this deadline. No, we're not agreeing to it, basically. And laying out the reasons why they didn't want to, which is interesting and he has slightly different reasons for each of them. The domestic surveillance logic is that basically law has not caught up to the risks of AI powered domestic surveillance. And there's already some bipartisan concerns about, for example, law enforcement agencies buying data from data brokers and therefore circumventing the Fourth Amendment that way, which has happened. And then if you have AI, then you can do that on sort of like a mass scale that would not be possible if you were doing it manually. Whereas previously you could use that to just infringe on people's Fourth Amendment rights individually, one at a time, as people needed to investigate one particular person. But the AI would allow you to do that basically at scale if you collected all of the data in one place, and then monitor. You could use AI to monitor it and have a AI-powered panopticon state. And that there were not laws that had caught up to that, and therefore they wanted a specific guardrails around that until laws were in place. And then the other concern around the autonomous weapons targeting was basically just like the models are not good enough for that. You should not give them the keys to anything that is just going to kill someone without a human input, basically.
Yeah.
And we've offered to work with them on like improving the safeguards and et cetera, but they refused. So that was Dario Amade's statement. As then we were leading into Friday. Events on Friday, which happened in like fairly quick succession Friday afternoon. There was this Google and OpenAI employee support petition, which is basically an online thing where Google and OpenAI employees proved that they were Google and OpenAI employees and basically said, we want Google and OpenAI to hold to the same standards, basically. Because the idea being here, all of these companies were having negotiations with the Pentagon at the same time for whether they can use AI for their classified operations. And while Anthropic was the only one, XAI, Google, OpenAI were in negotiations to also do that. There was also news this week that XAI did come to an agreement to be used in classified operations. So it was Google and OpenAI still doing negotiations, which is why the employees were like, please hold to the same standards, basically.
Yep.
And last I looked at that, there were like 100 OpenAI employees and like 500 Google employees on that. Also, some news reporting that came out at like 2 p.m. or something on Friday was actually Sam Altman saying that he believes OpenAI should hold to those same standards, more or less, and that he thinks he has a lot of difference with Anthropic, but he thinks they're sincere about wanting to be safety and also believes in those safety standards, basically. And everyone was like, whoa, that's something. He's going to side with Anthropic? That's weird. He's basically like sent an internal note to OpenAI employees about that, more or less. We're still going through things in chronological order. So then like 2 hours after that, Trump tweets or Trump truths on Truth Social and says, basically, all federal organizations should stop using Claude right now, and we're going to never do business with them ever again. We don't need them, and we don't want them, more or less. And while he says immediately, he also says there's a 6-month phase-out period, which is an interesting interpretation of the word immediately. But
it's Trump.
So that's actually even broader than what Hegseth was threatening with the supply chain risk thing, which would have been military focused. Trump was saying like all federal organizations stop using Claude. And then like 30 minutes to an hour after that, Hegseth did tweet this time, about declaring Anthropic a supply chain risk at the like 5 p.m. deadline or more so. So then after that, Anthropic posted another statement from Dario Amodei that was basically like, we're sorry to hear that, but we think this is completely unreasonable. And if you ever actually do go through declaring us a supply chain risk, we're going to see you in court, more or less. And also noted that they hadn't actually been contacted directly about either of these things. Trump's Truth Social post and Hegseth's tweet were how they found about this also, which is fun. I love governing via tweet. Then after that, Sam Altman tweeted that OpenAI had reached a deal already with the Department of Defense like 3 hours afterwards. And had this really like double talk tweet about it, where you could read the tweet as saying basically the government gave us the concessions that they wouldn't give Anthropic, because he said like our contract does include these 2 safeguards that we really cared about, more or less, which was weird because that doesn't make any sense. And then other people like me read that and interpreted it as basically that he was accepting a deal that Anthropic had refused, and that Dario Amade's statement had said we were offered basically like a quote unquote compromise deal that more or less said like we respect these two safeguards, but we'll discard them if we feel like it anyway. And basically the Anthropic was like, that's not acceptable. Like that still says you could just do it if you want to. Like that the concern is that like there's nothing stopping you from doing it, and there's still nothing stopping you from doing it. So that seems to be the deal that OpenAI has accepted, as was clarified later yesterday, like after we were first recording, by Jeremy Lewin, also on Twitter, basically saying, to clarify from the government's perspective, this is the all lawful uses. And it's just like acknowledging that we will follow the law on those specific things, more or less. But Sam Altman's like, we have told the government to offer that same deal to all the other companies, and we think that they should accept it. The saner heads should prevail. A lot of people didn't believe that and thought that was a really two-faced move, especially like 3 hours after he'd said, I agree with Anthropic on their principles here. And if you look at the OpenAI Reddit or the ChatGPT Reddit, it's full of people being like, okay, guess I'm canceling and swapping to Claude. And we've
I see a lot of that going on over the weekend.
And apparently Claude is #1 in the Apple App Store now, above ChatGPT. Yeah. So that's happening. I think that's all the events to date, as far as I'm aware, unless something else has happened in the last few hours, which you never know when it's happening via Twitter.
You never know. It's true. God, I was like paging through one of these like Washington Post articles, and you gotta love that like the Washington Post, now, you know, notably owned by Jeff Bezos, who has like laid off a bunch of, you know, like staff, was just like, you know, in the same breath as being like, yes, you know, it's like Google and OpenAI like employees signed an open letter backing Anthropic's stance, but Anthropic's rivals were poised and at the ready to take advantage of its blunders. Like, the fact that you're calling this a blunder, I feel like is just a really weirdly telling word choice from the Washington Post, of all things. And it's just like, okay, this is such a weird place to exist in.
Yeah.
What is going on?
So,
but yeah, the article that I linked on there, one of the reporters at TechCrunch interviewed the guy who founded the Future of Life Institute, so like the organization that had originally signed the open letter, created the open letter signed by Elon Musk calling for a pause in advanced AI development, Max Tegmark. And his opinion is very much like they kind of backed themselves into that corner because we've been in a situation where we've been expecting the companies to self-regulate, essentially. If we had gone the path of all the AI companies that signed the open letter from the Institute, working with Congress to set up safeguards and, you know, regulations around AI, we've been in a situation where it's like, yes, legal use doesn't include that because we defined what legal use is. And because they didn't do that, like, well, guess what? You didn't write the rule book, and so it's being written for you kind of situation. You don't want to ever let the companies write their own regulations. It's bad. It's how you get like what the entire tobacco industry did. You know, it's like, it's just not a...
Yes, but also you should write some regulations at all, which the federal government appears to be anti at this point. So,
yeah, during Biden's administration, you could have done something. Like, if you had talked to Biden and said, "Hey, we want to regulate AI," I think you could have gotten people on board.
Yeah, and like Biden did have I think an exec order around AI that had some stuff in it that Trump then immediately repealed. So,
right, but it was more like working with Biden administration and also Congress, because
like some real regulation would have been nice. Yes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but one of the interesting things I think that like whatchamacallit, that like is sort of called out in this TechCrunch article is that like AI is in fact a like it's a security risk. Like, the people who are making it don't know how it works and don't know what it's capable of doing entirely. And it's like, even like Dario Amade is just like, yeah, this is like, you know, a country of geniuses in a data center, like that quote. It's like, you should be afraid of that. If we don't know how they work, they are threats. And they're a threat until we know how we can use them. Then they will become an asset. And I'm not saying that these things don't become assets, but I'm saying that like until the point in time at which they do, they are kind of threats. And we need to understand them from like a threat model. Like we need like a Los Alamos for AI, basically, kind of thing.
I think that's mostly true. I do think there's still things that are just objectively assets about it. Like a lot of the way the military is using Claude right now is not just like Claude is an operator in the field or whatever. It is like doing data analysis and like all of that kind of stuff that there's just like mechanical intelligence operations that requires dealing with a whole bunch of data in ways that AI is good at. And like that is a useful thing for them, which is
sure. but like again, like this is like broadly versus specifics. Like broadly, it is kind of a threat. It's like there may be specific aspects of it that are assets, but until we can kind of really get our minds around this broad scope of it, and especially like, you know, the whole like AI targeting and surveillance piece. It's like those are threatening things.
Yes.
Because it's like if you can't control them, if you don't really know how they're doing what they're doing and like how they're arriving at the conclusions that they're arriving at, it's like as much as I hate this movie, I'm reminded of Avengers Age of Ultron because it was just, the movie was so dumb. I hated the like entire premise of it. But it was very much, it's like, okay, I made a super intelligence and it decided the best thing to do is to like launch, you know, a meteor into Earth so that all of humanity endures nuclear winter. And it's like, it's like we don't really know. Like that, like nobody can say with confidence AI won't do that. Like if it gets to a certain point. And that's why it's like, that's why the RSP thing is worrying. That's why this whole DoD nonsense is worrying. And it's like,
and like specifically some of the wording around the deal that OpenAI accepted, it sounded like what Anthropic was asking for was a complete ban on using AI to do autonomous targeting with no human involvement. And the way that Sam Altman phrased the deal that they came to was not quite that. It was human responsibility for use of force, which implies not necessarily that the human is in the decision-making chain, but that a human has ultimate responsibility for it, which is a different thing. And like, it doesn't really help if the AI launches the meteor into Earth if there's someone who is like, well, that was under my watch, sorry.
Especially given like tangentially sort of like what we've seen about Department of Homeland Security hiring practices lately and the, you know, the amount of layoffs that have happened because of DOGE, where it's like kind of to our point earlier this episode about like what happens when you lay off a large swath of people at your organization. It's like, well, you lose experiential knowledge, you lose competency in the thing that you do. And it's like, that's kind of our government right now has lost a bunch of competency in a lot of areas where people with these really apolitical positions have just been, you know, furloughed and taken from their jobs because the commander-in-chief thought that they were his enemies.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't trust, you know, autonomous missile firing AIs in the hand of any government, but I particularly don't trust autonomous, you know, missile firing AIs in the hands of this government.
I was going to talk about it as retaliation against political enemies, speaking of, because that is like this whole story too, right? Because like it's not that Anthropic did anything particularly here. It is that the federal government decided that Anthropic was too woke and insufficiently supportive of Trump, and was mad that this company that was insufficiently supportive of Trump was a really key part of their military infrastructure. And so they wanted to sort of like force submission.
Force them out,
well, force them out or force them to like fall in line, basically. And because they refused to fall in line, they are going to try and force them out. And then like it's from all reporting that I've heard, it sounds like it's going to be a huge pain because it's not actually like that easy to just flip over.
No, you can't. Like government contracts take so long to get signed in the first place. Like, they go through so many checks and so many like layers of validation and bidding and counter bidding and stuff, that's like, if somebody has signed a government contract, you don't get to just say no, like, I don't like you anymore, because you did in fact do a bunch of work to say this person is qualified and capable of doing this job. It's like you really have
Also,
to kind
like,
of like prove a negative there.
also they have been using Claude within the military for like a year or something, and it's pretty well integrated into workflows, such that I saw a bunch of quotes from people who were like, yeah, it would actually be really inconvenient if we couldn't use it anymore because it's very useful and I've been using it.
Right.
And
right. It's like they have a very heavy burden of proof that sits on them now if they really want to like extrapolate it away, because it's like they now basically have to say like Anthropic is in breach of contract somehow, or like Claude is, like I said, supply chain risk. But it's like I'm annoyed. It's like, I want this to go to the courts. I'm annoyed that it's going to have to go to the courts because it is just going to be wasting government funds on a very frivolous legal battle. Even when like most legal scholars are just like, this is dumb. This is a waste of time and resources.
Yeah, I've already seen those quotes basically being like, it would be really hard to defend the supply chain risk designation here due to how they are not any different than OpenAI really at all. And this is pretty transparently politically motivated. So I don't know. And like, again, like they haven't even attempted to legally make the designation yet. It was just a tweet by Pete Hegseth. So I want to predict what was going to happen next year, but I have no idea. I was trying to predict it midday on Friday, and I had no idea. Interesting things to see coming next will be, do they actually go through the effort to try and legally designate them as a supply chain risk, or do they just say our contract is over and we have OpenAI now and we're not going to worry about that?
Because even if they do that, that is a huge deal where they're going to need to fight it. Like, that's not something you can just say our contract is over. These contracts tend to have pretty long terms on them, and like specific clauses for like early cancellation. They're probably going to wind up owing Anthropic a ton of money if they do that.
And yet that's still a step removed from the supply chain risk, because if it's a supply chain risk thing, then like all government contractors working on military things have to stop using Claude. And that's a bunch of people. No. So like that's one thing that'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what Google ends up doing here, because as mentioned, they're still have outstanding negotiations with the Department of Defense, and will they accept the same quote unquote compromise deal that OpenAI did, or
one would
not.
Hope that Google would see the rash of people being like, well, guess I'm canceling my ChatGPT subscription because of what they did with the Department of Defense, and maybe at least pause a moment, at least like have a moment of consideration or hesitation before they just charge into bed with the DoD. But honestly, like, given Google's leadership, I don't know.
At the very least, I think Google's going to take longer to make a decision, whereas Sam Altman can just be like, here we go, done, stamp. Google at least has just like a
Google
a committee,
a publicly traded company that has to actually answer to its shareholders. And if Google prices take a huge tank after they sign a DoD deal, then they need to explain why they lost a bunch of money.
And they have
for making this deal.
A much bigger company and a much larger leadership. Group. It's very interesting, because like during the like 2-hour window on Friday when I was like, oh my gosh, is OpenAI going to stand with Anthropic on this one? I was like, well, if they do, then Google absolutely is also.
Like for a moment there was a glimmering window of hope where maybe we could have had all of the AI companies aligned in standing up for
except for XAI.
Except for XAI, but whatever, XAI. Like it's Musk. But like we could have had like all of the non-Nazi AI companies standing together and being like, no, we actually have a standard. This is our standard. But no, Sam Altman had to had to bend because he's a baby.
And he's just like, he's really confusing the field a lot too, because it's like, it's not even like he was like no, I don't agree with Anthropic and I'm going to take this, I think it's reasonable. He was trying to say, like, no, actually, I do agree with Anthropic, and I think they were just, like, being unreasonable by rejecting this contract, and, like, actually it does give them what they wanted, which
feels very snake oil salesman. Feels
it
very
is
speaking out of both sides of his mouth.
Yes, for sure that, because he was trying to, like, do this tweet that somehow both said, I gave the government what they wanted with their all legal uses thing, and I still believe in the principles that Anthropic was standing up for, and those are in the contract. And that's why it was a very confusing tweet to read, and many people came away from it with very different perceptions of what had happened, because he tried to give both perceptions at the same time. And why someone had to come out and clarify, like, this is the all legal uses. It's just has some language in there about adhering to existing policies about those other things. So that makes it harder to argue than it would be if he just, like,
come out on one side or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes it harder to argue, but also really is just showing his colors.
Yeah.
In very public forum of just like, okay, cool. Sam Altman is a snake oil salesman who says whatever he thinks people want to hear.
Yeah. I am also curious on any response from other OpenAI employees on this, because as mentioned, there were like 100 of them that signed this "Please Stand with Anthropic" petition. And there's a later Axios one than the one that I linked that was talking about Sam Altman sending a late night Friday message to all OpenAI employees at like 8 p.m. on Friday or something like that, after he'd accepted this deal, trying to explain it. And basically being like, here are the reasons why I think this is the correct thing to do. We'll get to, like, see how they're using it. We'll get to have people in place and impose guardrails and etc. And, like, I understand it's a complicated issue and it may not, quote, look good in the short term. So he is acknowledging that it doesn't look good to his employees at 8 p.m. on Friday after making this deal. And if I was an OpenAI employee, personally, who still believed in, like, standing up for safety and the AI for good of humanity stuff, I would read that email and be like, I don't know about that, dude.
I would read that email and be like, okay, cool, looking for other jobs.
Yes. You know? So we'll see if this...
Yeah. I'd be drafting my resignation letter if I read that.
Yeah, and... Again, it's like that was 8 p.m. on Friday, and it's still not even Monday yet. So we may see some of that coming up this week. I will assume at least a couple. I don't know how many, like, ideologically motivated people there still are at OpenAI. Like, there's been a lot of transition there. Apparently, I've seen reporting, which is like they started out, like I mentioned, a nonprofit with the AI for good of humanity, and a lot of people who worked there at that point believed in that. Many of them left to found Anthropic. Many of them left also after Sam Altman was ousted. Like, a lot of their leadership team, Mira Murati, who is the CTO, left and founded her AI company. Ilya Scott-Sever, who is the chief scientist, left and founded his own AI company. A bunch of people went with those various people to join their companies out of OpenAI. And they hired a bunch of ex-Facebook Meta people to come fill the gaps, who are more focused on, like, how do we build products that we monetize via engagement and ads and stuff like that. So the internal OpenAI culture has shifted somewhat in that direction, but presumably, like, I know there are still people there who care about that stuff, so I don't know.
It is like one of those things. Like, it's interesting to see kind of like how do the opinion of the employees versus the opinion of the leadership, and sort of how that, like, ideologically can be pretty disparate. You know, there's a lot of really good people working at Amazon, even though, like, you know, ideologically Amazon is kind of not very well aligned with those people's individual beliefs, but then, like, they do some, like, exert an influence from within the organization at times. But yeah, this is one of those times where it's like, well, maybe it is time for you to start, you know, leveraging what push you have to sort of, like, make the company realize, like, how they're going to appear to talent and, you know, like, their consumer base and what have you. I know it's, like, very anecdotal just seeing people being like, oh, I'm canceling my chat GPT, blah, 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 like Katy Perry posting.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yes.
the little heart on her getting an Anthropic like subscription. It's very cute, but it's like, yeah, it's like how much is that actually hitting their bottom line? Would be
Mm-hmm.
definitely just kind of like an interesting thing, because it's like that is something that companies do pay attention to, and that is something that, you know, it's like if they are seeing a pretty big hit to like revenue, that thing that they
Yes.
keep on trying to do that they
Yeah.
still have not turned into profit yet, it's like that might, you know, make some folks speak up a bit more.
Yeah. And like, I think last time I looked, like 70% of the revenue was consumer based revenue. So, and like, the consumer base is what's out here canceling. So,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they can move super easily. I did also see a launch from Anthropic this morning that was like, make it easier to port over your memory from other AI systems.
Good move, Anthropic. Good move.
Because there were a lot of.
I'm still mad at you, Anthropic, but that's a good move.
Because yeah, I saw a bunch of people on Reddit being like, "Oh man, what a pain! I'll have all of my history with ChatGPT," and like some people being like, "Well, you can go into your memory system and have it just like output everything that it has in memory, and then just drop that into Claude, and it's fine." And I think that's probably true, but also just having an easy tool for it is like, "Yep, that's the move."
Yeah,
and yeah, like that's just really been a thing that Anthropic is good at in general, is like seeing what's happening and being like, what can we do to jump on that?
Being agile, being
Yes.
being very like fast to respond to what other people dropping the ball, which is, again, it's like that Washington Post article. It's like, yes, they're fumbling, and it's like, really?
I don't know. I don't know if this is a fumble. It's still, like, remains to be seen. Like,
yeah. It's like, I feel like Anthropic is actually capitalizing on ChatGPT's blunder, if I had to say something. Yeah. But also, it's like the thing is that you have to then consider is like, yes, right now a majority of their business is consumer based, but like, if they just ink this deal with the DoD, how much money is that hauling in, and does it offset? Because it's very possible from like a corporate strategic, to play devil's advocate a moment, from a corporate strategic perspective, to be like, oh, sure, we lost like, you know, $10 million of revenue from like, you know, consumer, but we're making $200 million off of this DoD deal, so we don't care.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and it's not really clear how that's going to shake out at this point on either side. Where it's like, well, Claude lost their $200 million, like, but that's a pretty small segment of their revenue. Like they're I think the last,
honestly, $200 million is a pretty small deal as far as the DoD is concerned. I feel. Like.
Yeah. Yes, I forget whose quote it was, talking about like Anthropic has a really strong position here because like it's great PR for them, and they do not need that $200 million of money. Like they simply do not. Yeah. And like the calculation becomes a lot different if they are in fact declared a supply chain risk and like banned from all federal agencies. But even so, it's not clear how that balance comes out really. So
yeah, and also to the point, that case for supply chain risk is weak. I mean, it's like we've seen that the Supreme Court in this day and age is very willing to just be like, no, that's wrong. You can't do that, Trump administration.
Yeah,
like when it comes to like tariffs and stuff.
Flagrantly just like not within their capabilities. So yeah.
Yeah, like when it's just like flagrant disregard for rule of law, they do seem to come down on the side of rule of law, thank goodness. But it is one of those things where it's just like, yeah, this seems like the kind of thing where it's like they would kind of come down on the side of Anthropic of like, hey, no, you can't just declare somebody a supply chain risk because you are not politically aligned with them.
Yeah, because like that's a big thing in general. All companies are like, okay, is this what we're doing now? The government gets to just be like, we don't like your politics. No one is allowed to work with you. Like, because that's concerning if that's a thing that we're doing now. So yeah, there's a lot of that where it's like, I feel like this is a precedent that a lot of people don't want to see set. Even people who are not necessarily politically aligned with Anthropic probably don't want it to be setting a precedent such that the federal government can just like tell companies like that kind of stuff. Because again, theoretically, we'll have a new government in a few years. And
theoretically, yeah. I mean, hell, we might have a new Congress by the end of this year. So.
Yeah, and so like they have to be concerned too, where it's like, well, if the government isn't someone who agrees with you, and they can just go do this to the companies that you like, like it's a bad precedent. And I did see a bunch of people talking about that, like late on Friday when I was looking at this, I actually went and read Fox News's reporting on this and looked at the comments on the Fox News articles. And like,
that's interesting.
Even in the comments on the Fox News articles, it was a lot of people being like, is this what we're doing now? The government just gets to like tell private companies what to do? Like, that doesn't seem right. Is that what we're for now? That doesn't sound right. Or even like, okay, so no domestic surveillance or autonomous weapons targeting is woke now? Is that what we're saying now?
Yeah. It is one of those things where it's just like, I mean, I feel bad for folks who got duped, but it is good, I feel, like a net good thing for people to realize. It's like, no, like everything that the Republican Party was telling you that the Democrats would do, surprise, that's what the Republicans wanted to do, which is also like, it's such a, I don't know, just stupid like proto-fascist nonsense where it's just like, you would think that would not be politically strategic, but they keep on having an out-group to pin the blame on, and so it continues to work for them in this very frustrating way of how political discourse works out.
Yes. Yeah, it's very frustrating, but it is just like this. It was nice to see that this was in fact so transparent and really hard to argue for, that even a lot of people in the Fox News comments were like, most of the top comments were people being like, what the hell? So
yeah,
that was reassuring a little.
That is reassuring, yes.
The other thing that I want to talk about that you mentioned briefly a bit ago was the talent part of it, because that was also a comment in one of the Washington Post articles, I think, that was like, in this being good PR for Anthropic, it is also potentially I think the quote was, a good recruiting tool for ideological engineers ahead of their IPO. Which is true as an ideological engineer who's being recruited. Like, yes, if you're someone who cares about this stuff, like you don't want to work for OpenAI, you want to work for Anthropic. So like, and there remains that interesting feedback loop there where it's like the government and federal agencies don't want to stop using Claude because Claude is good. And if you are recruiting all of the engineers because engineers actually care about things, like have ethics and stuff and want to work for the more ethical company, then you have the better product and then people want to keep using it. So we'll see how it all plays out. I think there's just so much up in the air now that it's hard to tell, but
yeah, it is like, there's a lot of bad things in this. There are like some silver linings to the storm clouds, but the storm clouds do still be looming. So it's kind of the long and short of it, in my opinion. It's not all negative, but it's like, but the positive is maybe not super huge positive things happening here.
Yes, it would have been nicer if Sam Altman didn't flip immediately.
Just went belly up like a freaking possum. Like, oh my God. Like, geez, Sam Altman, have a spine. You don't have a spine.
No, very frustrating, because it was just like, again, for like 2 hours, it's like, oh, are you going to have principals here? That would be cool.
Yeah.
No. Or,
no.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I didn't ever think that he was having principles about it. I thought that he was reading the room and being like, Anthropic's getting a ton of good press for this, and I don't want to be the bad guy in this situation.
I mean, it seems like that's still what he was trying to get out of it. He was still trying to get the, like, I don't want to be the bad guy, so I'm going to be the good guy, but also I want the money.
Yes. Also, he unfortunately made his, like, I stand with Anthropic pronouncement like 2 hours before Trump tweeted and said, was like, we hate them and we never want to work with them. And when I saw that, I was like, I don't know if he's going to like try and stand on the Anthropic side at that point, or if he's going to try and weasel his way out of it somehow. And my prediction was not he like bold-facedly pretends that he's still adhering to the principles while flipping about it. But I guess that's why I'm not CEO of a $500 billion company. Like, none of these people act logically, so
none of these people act logically,
except for maybe Dario Amodei, but
yeah, like Dario Amodei acts logically, but also it's like Dario Amodei still acts like a capitalist at the end of the day, which is also like,
he has much more idealism about capitalism, as we've discussed previously, where he's just like where he's just like, the way that this is supposed to work is that we outcompete our competition, and then we win in the market. And there are a lot of people quoting a quote that he had, which is like race to the top, as opposed to race to the bottom, where his argument is like, if Anthropic is winning through having morals, basically, it will force everyone else to have morals also in order to compete. Which it looked for a second like it might happen here, but no,
not.
Seems like no.
no, and it's like I do gotta shit on Dario for just a moment. That's a very idealistic way of looking at it. Like, I'm sorry, you can't trust an industry to self-regulate.
Like, again, to be fair, they are advocating for regulation, so.
Yeah, but.
Yeah.
Still, like, maybe after the midterms, I believe it. You know,
that's true.
Like, if I feel like this is giving some midterm candidates some great fodder for their platform.
Mm-hmm.
They can basically go out to their constituents and say, I think we should regulate AI so it can't do these things.
Yes.
They'd get Fox News viewers on their side. So it's like,
true.
Hey,
we've talked about this.
Maybe that's the good turn of events.
Yeah, we talked about this before, about AI being a really pivotal issue in the midterms. Right. And I do think this is a really clear case where you could get a lot of the public vote on your side here.
By coming down on the right side of the issue, which again is probably the side Democrats are going to come down onto, and not so much Republicans.
Yeah, especially to the extent that they still need to align themselves with Trump, because Trump has been very clear on which side he falls on. And that's not necessarily what, especially some constituencies of Republicans are for. So,
yeah.
We will see, I suppose.
We shall see indeed.
Thank you for listening to the Fast and Broken podcast. I'm Carly Rector, and if you'd like to support my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter at carlyrector.substack.com.
And I've been Teresa Kramer. If you want my voice on your products, you can visit my website at teresakramer.com.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, leave us a like or a review. It lets us know people are listening and helps more people find the podcast. See you next week.